Okay, so families, in the world of families, and maybe I was thinking maybe sheets, which could be very useful for you, even though we're not using sheets. It might be useful for studio or for other projects you might have. Okay, so this is, I started the project as always, an architectural template. And families, so I'm just gonna create a wall. As you remember, always check out the type, change all the parameters that you need to change. If there's an offset, if it's a chain of lines, what is the top and the bottom constraints, all of these things you know by now. Before you put the wall, maybe you wanna make sure that the levels are where you want it to be. You wanna go from this level to that level, et cetera, et cetera. And then you start drawing the walls with any of the drawing tools that you have here. It could be a series of lines as a chain or a polyline system, or you can definitely use any other components such as the tangents or the fillet components. One thing that some of you are trying to do is like complex curves, and maybe you can't do a floor nicely or a roof or a particular element when you use the spline command, which is this. Okay, so be careful with splines. Splines tend to be tricky, but if you use a combination of straight lines and fillet curves, you can pretty much do any curve you want and as elegant and sophisticated as you want. And that will allow you to do railings, and again, the spline doesn't let you do, or for example, stairs following that curve, or many other things you won't be able to do if you use the splines, okay? Okay, so that's a wall. And I think we've been talking about different types of walls. We have the current wall systems that you can modify the number of grids and the number of mullions. We've talked about if you want to edit a wall, the best way to go is with edit type. Always duplicate and call it new, hello, whatever it is, and then change the edit, basically the layers that make that wall. No, you can create that way any type of wall. And one of the walls that we did last class is what if this is only one layer and it's made of glass? No? So you would just delete everything except this layer, and you will give it a structural function and then just a glass material in a thickness of 3 inches, whatever it is, the glass that you think you can actually fabricate, which is probably impossible, if not difficult. No? Okay, so that would be a way to do any type of wall that you want. And as I mentioned as well, by editing the type of wall, you're editing the material of that wall, which obviously for us is very important. When I render this renders as brick. Why? Well, if I click on that wall and I edit type and look at the layers of that wall, the function finish on the exterior side, it's brick common, is a type of material, brick. And it's this thickness, which is 3 5/8 of an inch. Towards the interior side, which is the bottom, it says finish as well as gypsum wallboard, 1/2 an inch. So that's how you change the way things render in Revit, by in their walls, by adding the layer and assigning the material that you want there. It's very different from many other softwares like Rhino or 3D Max and so on, where you just assign to an object or to a face a material. There's no, you need to create a particular layer and assign to that layer the material. Layer, I mean material layer in the wall component. Exterior is brick, and the interior is gypsum wallboard, sheetrock. And when I render this, if I go to the teapot, I say render, that will give me a brick. We'll talk more about renderings as we move forward. But this is the essential logic of Revit, is that you just need to know where to assign a material, and that is linked to the rendering qualities of that material. Okay, so for example, if I select this wall, edit type, edit, and I change the finish from brick common I click to that little square here. It will open the material browser. I can select any other material that is here as a default. Carpet. Okay, carpet normally is not 3 inches, so it might be like much less, half an inch. That will change the thickness, and I say okay. One thing I always mistaken is that I should have duplicated this before. That's what happens if I say okay this. All of the walls, their name as exterior brick on metal studs, change the material to carpet, which is a mistake because when I select this, it's going to be titled exterior brick on metal studs. This is not what it is. So when you do that, be careful. Especially if you work in an office, they're going to tell you, you messed up the whole thing. You should always edit type. I went back with Ctrl-C, and before changing anything, duplicate. Exterior, and here will be carpet on metal studs, because it's the same thing, no? And now that I edited and I duplicated and I name it the way I want it to be, I can change the layers as I want to. Half an inch. That changes only the one I was selecting, because by duplicating, I'm saying, hey, you wall become the other type of wall, but the other ones should not change. Imagine I want to make this wall the same as that one. Well, because I duplicated that one, that should be somewhere around here as a new type. Exterior carpet on metal studs. Perfect. So that's the world of walls. You can edit walls in other ways that we haven't talked about. If you select the wall and you edit profile or you double click, you can create weird openings. Weird, I mean, like you can literally create irregular shapes and say, okay, and create those openings like that. You can always edit it again and delete it. And you can create any kind of cut. Now, as long as it's a polyline, a closed polyline, this is not, so I will have to split in the middle here. I cut the line and then I use the trim TR to make a single polyline. And if I say, okay, that will be the opening of that wall. Notice that in curved walls, you don't have the edit profile because it's not an extrusion per se. So if you wanted to do this, you will need another tool within Revit to do that, which we're not talking yet about. Okay. Nice. I can place doors. And again, as I mentioned before, we only are given a single flush and a several number of options within that type. So I could select the different sizes and place them in different points of the walls. I could always select the doors and change the type and the dimensions of that door. But if I say door and I want something special, there's only one type. That's when you load the family. I want something different, and I'm hoping that Revit has some standard options in the libraries that they have. So load family. You go to doors, which is right here, and there you have several doors. Do not bring the curtain walls. These are doors only for curtain walls. We can see later on. Any other door is fine. Normally opens this window because there are many options. You can load many of them, or just one or two if you know exactly the one you want. And that will bring a new type of wall with dimensions. If I select door, again, I can move it. I can distance it from the following door, whatever dimension. And potentially under the edit type or under the type itself, you might find interesting materials that you want to change. So always for any of these things, if you're trying to change the material, for example, the framing, select that family, edit type, and search for all the stuff that is in here. Look how many things you can get, no? Dimensions, but here's a construction. Here's panel material, glazing material, and trim material. Those are 3 materials that you can edit. Before you change anything, duplicate and call it material new or something. So you make sure that you're editing something and then you know which one is edited. No? So then imagine you want to change the panel material, 3 dots here. And let's use, and again, it's a little dummy, but for the sake of it, let's use carpet. Now I have carpet as the panel material. And there you have. Why not? A cool carpet frame for a door. Remember, doors are present in plan with open panels, and you can flip these guys however you want, inside or outside. So they're extremely easy to edit their position and the organization in space. You can also select them and notice that the type, it's a completely different one, it says material new, and there is the size as well. You can change it to a smaller one or to a bigger one. I can change the glass panel to an opaque one if you find a glass that you like, etc., etc. Okay, so again, doors, load family, search for the doors folder, and adventure yourself to different types of doors that you might like a garage door. This one is probably not ideal here because it's much bigger. Why not? And that door will show like this. The dashed line being a hidden line of an object or a volume that is on the top. This object that contains the roll with a mechanism. Again, door, load family, and choose the one you want. After a month or so working in Revit, and you talk to your boss or your professor, and you decide that, wait a minute, I don't have the door I'm looking for. Nowhere here to be found. That's when you go to the web. Okay, Revit Seek. Well, it used to be Revit 6, now it's BIM objects. Free download. Okay, remember, log in, register, place your email, and start searching for doors. Make sure that it's a Revit family type, and you have a huge, if not infinite, collection of doors out there. You download them, you say, well, where do I put it? I would just try to put it in the same folder where you have the rest of the doors. But otherwise, you can always create a folder that calls Revit doors somewhere, and you place every single new Revit family type there, and you will just do the same we're doing now, door, load family, and you would search for it wherever it is. Okay, under my computer, whatever folder you have created. And it should load it here as well. Windows is the same. You can place any kind of window you want. The default's a simple one. Rotation of elements is RO shortcut. So you can actually use that command as you see fit. And these are, again, standard doors that you can find in Revit. You can change the sizes or whatever it is. Now, I need more windows. Window, load family, up, windows, and you have a bunch of stuff here. Skylights in an angle, funky shapes, round, triple, blah, blah, blah. Select the different types, okay, and they come as new types. Click there. And then you have a cute little window. And how does it show in plan? Here, with all of the mullions and what window panels are all opening, etc., etc. Fantastic. You select it, and you can also change the type and make a different type of window. And also those windows will have an edit type command, and you can investigate the materials. So exterior materials, clad, white, wood, stain, and again, duplicate, change the material naming, and then change the materials as you see fit. Glass panel, interior trims, etc., etc. But again, you might run out of windows. You say windows, load family, and oh, I don't have the window I want. It's just too ugly. BIM objects, or you Google Revit files I want to download for free. No? Search window. And you can have a trillion windows of different types that you can use. Okay. Those are pretty much the logic of families. Doors, windows. The wall is not a family per se, but it's a type of architecture of a project type. So you can edit any wall to have as many layers as you want. And you can definitely, we will see later on, you can change materials up and down, stack them all together, etc., etc. We have seen roofs, it works the same way as walls. So when you do a roof, basically, you're also going to be selecting a type. So if I create a roof here, select the type, but imagine this type is not the one I want. I can edit the type, duplicate, roof, metal. And now I can edit the structure, and notice how I can have the same strategies in the walls where I can insert more layers, I can move them up, I can change them to a finished material, and I can change the material of that layer to whatever it is. Let's say metal. Let's say copper roof. And you can't say okay here because there's no such thing as a 0 inches thickness of copper. I mean, I think there's some other like insulations or some particular layers could be 0 just conceptually, but almost every other material needs to have a thickness. So the copper could be like 1/4 of an inch copper. Okay, so notice if I say okay, it's going to tell me that's wrong, the one over here, because it's 0, 0, no? Row 5, you must have thickness. So I'm going to create another layer here, finish. I want to create the sheetrock. Gypsum wool board, which is the classic, and 1/2 inch of an inch finished material. Okay, you can't see them because it's very small, but you can zoom in and see that there's actually 2 little layers there. Say okay, and that's your new roof. You create a roof. Remember, we mentioned this idea of tilted roofs or in an angle. You can select them and uncheck the finish slopes. And you can leave any other line with a slope. If you say, okay, that will be sloping in 2 directions, like here, no? Okay. So if I render this, the top is actually copper. And if I render from the interior, I will have gypsum board. That's what you get from copper. Not great, but that's what it is. There's a couple of commands about walls that you can use. If you have a roof on top, you can select the walls. You can attach top base. This means that any wall can go up as far as whatever roof or floor you have above. So if I do that and then click the roof, that wall will go upwards until it meets the roof, even if it has this angle shape, which is oftentimes very useful. You can select the wall, attach to base, select the roof, and there it goes. No? Now be careful. If I edit the footprint of the roof and I take it here, say okay, well, this wall is a little like confused. It knows that it has to snap to the bottom of the roof, but here's, I'm not going to do anything. So there's nothing above, okay? Roofs, floors are the same when you create a floor. If I create a floor of whatever boundary, first thing we need to do is make sure the type is the one we want. And if it's not exactly the type we want, you should always edit type, duplicate, and tell Revit what floor you want. Ceramic tile, but you don't want ceramic tile anymore. You might want carpet. The name has changed. You can edit it now. Finish, tile mosaic, no. I'm gonna change it to carpet now. And there you go. You change the floor, say okay. And that floor now is made of whatever layers in the type, but the finish material on the top, it's a carpet in red. Ceiling. Ceiling is a little different. If I create a wall, select the interior partition, for example, and I create a close, realm of rooms in an interior. And it doesn't matter if there are doors. Oops, I don't want that door. Pero bueno. Okay, imagine this is my project. To do a ceiling, the way it works is that you have two options. One is automatic ceiling. You can click on any closed environment. Notice how it signals with a red line if you want to do that environment and turn it into a ceiling. You also have different types, not too many. The gypsum wall board and metal studs on the continuous system. Okay, so it's actually, sorry, 3 is another one. And the 2x2 or the 2x4. This is the size of the modules. Okay, these are continuous and this will be modules of 2x2 or 2x4. I select that one, then I can select any space. And what is it saying when I click ceiling and on the room, a different type of ceiling? It pops out a message saying none of the created elements are visible in floor plan. Again, it's important to read the stuff that Revit tells us because almost always is useful. What it's saying is that you can't see it. When you create it here, given that you created on the floor plan, you can't see the ceiling that you just placed. That makes sense because the ceiling is seen on a ceiling plan. meaning cutting at 7 feet looking up. No, now we're cutting at 4 feet looking down. So we're creating a ceiling that we can't see. But if we go to the ceiling plan, there is. That's the ceiling I created. I can create another type of ceiling and place it in a different room. Okay. You can move the grids, and this again is the compound ceiling, is the one that's made of singular modules that you can lift and operate the machinery that might be hidden behind, or the lamps, etc. You can obviously move the grids to align them to the edges, so they start in a particular point and you don't have a small component of a ceiling. So you will do a move beginning the edge, and then you will have to decide how you resolve those issues. Another story. Okay, so that gives me ceilings of different types. If I get a section, how does the look? How does the ceiling look? The ceiling looks like this. This is the ceiling. That's a ceiling. That's a ceiling. These are different types of ceilings. How do we move the height of the ceiling? Under the parameters. Almost everything is parameters. You can move it manually, but I recommend that you set the height offset from whatever number to a different number, higher, lower, whatever you want it to be. Okay. And there they are. You can edit the boundary as well, and it will turn on into this magenta line. Probably that's better to do under the plan view, no? So you will go to level 1, select the ceiling, edit boundary, and you can make it smaller, bigger. But that takes me to the other way of doing ceilings. If you actually create a ceiling and you have the second option, sketch, that means that you can do any type of ceiling of any shape and at any height. There is my ceiling. Separated, many of you tend to do, and I like as well, to do this separated ceiling in the center, so it's not exactly going to the edges. You might want to recess some lights behind the ceiling, so you could actually do that with no problem. You go to the ceiling plan, create a ceiling, you create a sketch ceiling, and then you create whatever shape there's a bit smaller, no? You might want to give it a not so high, like a 7 feet. Well, it's too low, but anyway. And if I move the section, there is my ceiling falling down, no? So that would be a way of doing it. Ceilings, you can change the ceiling the same way. If you select the ceiling component, you can also edit the type, edit the structure, and add more layers, change the material of the finish. For example, from acoustic ceiling, you could say, I don't want an acoustic ceiling, I want it to be, yes, you guessed it right, carpet. And maybe a quarter or whatever it is. So that ceiling, now it's made of carpet. Everything's gonna be made of carpet in this project at the end. Why not? You might want to use a paint of red or whatever it is that you want to do. So that's ceilings. Well, oftentimes you have more interesting ceilings that they're changing angle or they're doing something a bit more funky. Well, there's a way to do that as well. You go to the ceiling components, you select the ceiling, and I'm tabbing there to select the ceiling because in the plan it's difficult. If you can't select it, just go to the section. You edit the boundary. There's one thing here called slope arrow. This allows you to create an arrow in one direction, and you can select that arrow and select the different heights for the front and for the back of that arrow. So that's why it's called level at tail. You call it default and default, but you say here height offset at tails +1 and 0. That means that the tail is going to be, I think, 1 feet above the head. Let me see if that works as I just said. So I'm going to create another section. There you go. Sloped. You can select it and edit again and change the arrow's height. So it could be like, instead of 1, you got it like 0 and -1. I think we can do that too. We go to the section. There you go. So I just lower it a bit. So imagine different components or different sizes of different ceilings, and maybe having each of them in a different orientation. For example, you can do a ceiling, sketch ceiling, circle, say okay. And then ceiling, sketch ceiling, circle. Say okay. I made these 2 circles, ceilings, but I can edit the boundaries and create now the slope arrow in whatever option I want, and change the arrow's offset to 2 and 0. That will be tilted like that. And then I can also edit this one to have another slope arrow in this direction. Select the arrow only and change this. I don't know if it's gonna be to 0 and 3. There you go. No? So you have these 2 ceilings, one on top of another one. You can get the plan of that as well. Sorry, a section of that. Perfect. Nice. So ceilings, you can change again the materials, you can change the angle of it. If you have to do something a bit more funky, curvy, the only way is to use conceptual masses. Okay, the only way. So you will have to use conceptual masses and say, assign to this face a new type of ceiling component. Floors, we talked about it. You can edit the floors, the layers of the floor, the material finishes of the floor, etc., etc. Curtain wall systems, you can add grids, cuts, mullions, etc. Railings, we know it's just adding a line and it will create a railing, and there are different types of railings. A ramp, super simple, super straightforward. We talked about stairs, and you can change the railings of those stairs, etc., etc. One thing that I haven't talked about, because it's more about construction documents, is very useful, is this, the room and area options. Okay, I'm just gonna go briefly because it's not what I want you to do, but might be useful for studio. If you click on room, you can insert your mouse inside of any room from a floor plan. And notice how this X-ray detecting in blue the perimeter of the room. Okay, that means that it's naming and understanding the perimeter of that room. And you can do that with as many rooms as you have. Automatically Revit numbers them. And you can change the name by calling the bathroom living room, kitchen, bedroom. What's the good thing about this? Well, you can, by the way, you can add separators that they're not visible, they're not materials. So sometimes the kitchen is open to the living room, so you can add a separator. And basically what it means that you will have another room here if you wanted to. Hello. Okay, so that's a separator within a space. Okay, you can tag the rooms, as we just did, but there's a whole world that you can afterwards extract colors for each of the rooms, and color code each of the rooms to have a diagram of the functions of your program, of your building, etc., etc. Again, I didn't want to talk about this. It's normally under annotate, and here is the color fill. Because this guy is color fill legend. So if you click there and you click there, it recognizes the rooms if you want, and by name, and automatically creates a legend for you, and it gives a color to the rooms. You obviously can edit the different colors of the legend, which is edit scheme here, and you can say, I don't like these rooms, and bathroom is always blue, no? So you go to the blue for the bathroom, and the bedroom is warm, and whatever, you go red, etc., etc. No? So then you say okay, and those change automatically, which is fantastic. Room legends. There are ways to create legends and extract the square footage of each of these rooms, which is obviously fantastic, but we're not going to talk about it. Not for this class, it's more of a construction documents thing, but it's very useful to do this, especially for studio. If you want to showcase a diagram, you can even turn off the legends, because you might not want them, and you have a room legend here, and then just the colors there, and you can even potentially add square footages and stuff like that, which is again very clean and nice. Before doing that in your level 1, I would recommend that you duplicate, and then you do this coloring in a particular floor that is titled level 1 function diagram or floor plan diagram or something like that, so you know exactly where to go. Because otherwise now you have to work here with the colors, which is not something that you want. You can do that for different floors, etc., etc. Okay. There's a whole world of annotate. The world of annotations we can call it the AutoCAD world, the world of annotate. Any element that you introduce from the annotate tab is basically 2D stuff. Again, AutoCAD stuff. And you can add dimensions, which they work very nicely. And then you just say from here to there. And after the videos, you probably have learned some of those. You have detail lines. This is DL versus the architectural line is model line. The model line is a 3-dimensional line. Basically, it can be placed anywhere in the space. But the annotate line, the detail line, is more like, think of an AutoCAD line that serves you to work with other lines that are in Revit to do something with them. And these lines and these dimensions and all of these things that are annotate, when you duplicate a view normally, meaning if you do not duplicate with detailing, those objects, the objects of the annotate, don't come with you. So if I say duplicate normal, the level 2 does not have that line I created. Whereas if I duplicate with detailing, it's basically taking the details of the annotate, and it will bring those lines. Sometimes it's very useful because you might not want to bring the dimensions and so on. It's up to you to decide what is best for you. When you duplicate as dependent, be careful, because what you're doing is duplicating, but it's exactly the same thing. So whatever you do in one, you're doing in the other one. Almost like if there was the same file duplicated, no? And if you were transforming something in one of the two, the other one will suffer the same transformations, okay? That's good sometimes when you're working with a big project that you have 3 different areas of study. You can create detail lines, again, with all of the options of AutoCAD, blah, 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 rotate. You have regions, which is the hats world, fillet regions that you can create any kind of pattern that you have here, many of them. Say, okay, and you can create that pattern. And again, these are 2-dimensional stuff. Components, think of this as the groups or the external references in AutoCAD. So that's the components in 2D. Can repeat stuff. It's like a polar in line. Think of it as in a normal project will have a lot of 3-dimensional objects, but then you will have a lot of drafting to do on a detail. For example, if you were to create a section here, okay, and you say, that's it, I'm done. No way, you're gonna have to start detailing stuff like how does this layer meet this thing? And then that's where you actually start annotating on top of it and creating the details that you need to create details and zoom ins and so on. We have seen the sections popular, but you have also the call out. Call out rectangle, what allows you to do is to zoom into a particular area. And the second you do this little funky attribute, which you can move the bubble around, you just created another view. Under sections. Notice how there's another view, section 3, call out 1. That's this element. And this is the bubble that will call that particular detail, and we'll see it in a second. And that's the detail. Then you go to annotate and you start annotating the hell out of this drawing, because it requires a highly more sophisticated set of line drawings that maybe this environment of the annotation is more useful. No? You have revision clouds, you have obviously text, which are fantastic. It's too big anyway. You can change the type of text, the size of the text, and what's more important, you have the annotation segments, which allows to connect text to details, which is the classic annotative type of drawing. No? Let me see if I can, let's see the size here, yeah, here. Okay, so I have that one, and then I can also select, look at this, guys. Give me a nice annotation line that can go directly to that detail. No, so that's the way it works. Okay, we have sections, callouts. These are fantastic. You can do a callout of a callout. You can break callouts in parts, so you can actually select this and shift this and cut the different pieces in different sections. Imagine you want to study this part up here, and then this other detail up here, and then you can move them up together. So they basically, you're creating a more segmented type of detail, or fragmented, I guess would be the word. You can add category annotations, so it gives you like a little of the material of what it is, automatically sometimes depending on the material, which are fantastic for, again, construction documents, and that's why I think Revit is most powerful when it comes to drawing the documents for a project that already has been designed and that is in the phase of a higher detail level. No? Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit of sheets, which we're not using, because what we're doing is actually printing each of the drawings, making a PDF, and bringing it into InDesign, which I recommend you do in Studio when you want to do a very fancy type of presentation. But there's a more construction documents type of presentation that is very useful and incredibly easy to learn. So it's the sheets, okay? So if you do a sheet, you can right-click, say New Sheet. You have one as a default, but you can load and go to the folder of title blocks, which if you don't have these folders, you can't find this either. And you can select any size you want. These are the defaults. You can create your own as well. We'll see that. If you create this one, this is 1117 template. This is also a family. That means that I can select it and edit the family, and opens up the family type, and I can edit a bunch of stuff. For example, I don't want that out of this thing, and I want to make this bigger. I save it, loading to the project. And normally there's a question, do you want to overwrite this one? Normally you say yes, because you just change it. So I just created my own title block there by selecting again, edit the family. I should have saved as better in a different name. The great thing about sheets is that you have all of this stuff here. And normally offices have their own little things, but all of these are links. Okay, and we'll see how to link. If I just created a sheet, it's called 101 unnamed. Okay, I can right click on that and rename and call that sheet like hello, and then 105 or whatever it is. And automatically the name here changes, and this changes as well, the number. So imagine if you have a project of certain dimension with 1035 sheets on it, then you wish you had this function that the text is linked to a particular naming. Okay. All of these other ones are links as well to the project information, which is under manage, and I think it's additional settings and so on. Okay. But how does sheet work? I create a sheet of my own, and I can just drag in as if you were in internet, no? So you can drag images to it, or you can take level 1 and drag it inside of the sheet itself. The first question would be, well, how big is this plan? Well, that is known here. It's the scale of the plan. So if I change that to a 1/16, for example, that means it's going to be smaller. And if I go to the sheet, automatically change size. If I go back to level 1, I can hide the elevation marks category. If I go back to the sheet, those are hidden. So whatever I do in the view that I dragged in is happening here. There's also like a little symbol that you can actually select, shrink the line, and select the line to move around. That tells you the name of that view and the number of the drawing as you were dragging them. No? So it's the first one you drag, and the scale. So this is fantastic. I know that this plan is exactly 1/16 of an inch equals 1 foot. Obviously, we might need to change the legend size and so on. It's another story. Anything that I drag, ceiling plan, will be at the scale of the plan itself. And the standard is 1/8. If you want to change it, you can change it. Or if it's good the way it is, you have it. You can do like in AutoCAD, where you actually double click on that little square, which is the paper space, and then you can edit directly here. And then right click and deactivate view. There's some features of alignment, but they're quite limited. It's not like InDesign or or Illustrator and so on. I can bring the call out of a section. It's very small, the section itself. And they should be aligning in a way so I can actually move these guys. The sections have the levels, the callouts has the information I added with a different text. And you can create as many sheets as you want of different sizes. You can place here also renderings or views. So if you go to the 3D and you duplicate this, for example, I could have an axonometric hidden line with shadows, and I hide the levels because I don't want them. And it could be the thing that I want to drag in to my sheet. Just selecting and dragging in here. Might be too big, then I have to actually change the size. And that's just an issue of scaling in and scaling out and so on. No? So your drawing could be, your sheet could be made out of explored analysis that we did last class. You can have a section box cutting on the object. You can have shadows, no shadows, one of them. You can have a plan, a section. So basically in one sheet, you can add everything that you want, including you can insert images from files. So you can literally manage the images. Wait. Search for an image and place it there. So it's almost like an InDesign within Revit, but it's a little bit clumsy. So if you start having a lot of things, it's heavy. And also, if you want to include high quality images aligned to each other, a high quality text, it's completely limited compared to InDesign. That's why what we're doing is printing each of the drawings or documents, as the video tutorials say, bring them to InDesign and be careful with the links there so you can work with a greater flexibility in that regard. I think I'm going to leave it there.